While everyone in NASCAR was arguing about race lengths, playoff formats, and championship battles, Kyle Larson quietly said something before the race weekend at Iowa Speedway that almost slipped past the headlines. It was just a few sentences in an interview with Motorsport.com. No press conference. No big announcement. But inside those few sentences, the two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion buried one of the most famous retirement plans in all of motorsports. The Sprint Car Championship dream that defined his future for 8 years is gone. And hidden in his own words is the real reason, a reason that has nothing to do with racing at all. Most people scrolled right past it. But if you listen closely to what Kyle Larson actually said, you will realize his entire future just changed. To understand how big this moment really is, you have to go back to 2018. Back then, Kyle Larson was driving for Chip Ganassi Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. He went on a podcast and laid out his future for everyone to hear. He said he wanted to leave the Cup Series before he turned 40 years old. His goal was simple and clear. He wanted to race wing sprint cars full-time and chase a championship in dirt racing. Then he backed up those comments on social media, and that is when the trouble started. A large group of NASCAR fans took those words personally. To them, it sounded like Kyle Larson was just clocking in every Sunday. It sounded like NASCAR was nothing more than a paycheck, and dirt racing was his real love. It sounded like he was counting down the days until he could walk away from the sport that made him famous. Kyle Larson heard all of that criticism, and he pushed back on it directly. He explained exactly where he stood at the time. "Look, the money is great," Kyle Larson said back then. "But I wouldn't be here if I didn't love NASCAR and have fun every week." He went on to explain that sprint cars are extremely fun and high horsepower machines, but that he genuinely wanted to be in NASCAR, and that the NASCAR lifestyle and the camaraderie with the fans is something really unique and special. Then he ended the whole debate with one line that said everything about how he felt. "The fans who think I don't like this are crazy." But here is the piece of context that most people forget about that period of his life. Chip Ganassi Racing kept Kyle Larson on a very short leash. He was capped at somewhere around 30 dirt races per year. And none of those races were allowed during the NASCAR playoffs. So of course he was dreaming about a life with no limits. He was a dirt racer at heart who was living with a fence built around him. The dream of leaving before 40 years old was not really about leaving NASCAR. It was about escaping restrictions. Then, everything changed. Kyle Larson moved to Hendrick Motorsports, and Rick Hendrick did the exact opposite of what Chip Ganassi Racing had done. He opened the gate completely. Kyle Larson was suddenly allowed to run dirt races almost whenever he wanted. And the results that followed tell the whole story. 27 of his 32 NASCAR Cup Series wins have come since 2018. He captured 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships, the first in 2021 and the second in 2025. On the dirt side, he collected 3 Knoxville Nationals, 3 Chili Bowls, and a King's Royal, which are the biggest crown jewel events in all of dirt racing. He also co-founded High Limit Racing, a sprint car series built to go head-to-head with the World of Outlaws. And he regularly races with that series during the middle of the week. Then came the contract that showed just how much Hendrick Motorsports values him. In February of 2026, Kyle Larson signed a 5-year contract extension to remain in the number 5 Chevrolet through the 2031 season, and crew chief Cliff Daniels signed a multi-year deal to stay on top of the pit box with him. Together, Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels have delivered dozens of wins and 2 championships, and Rick Hendrick was determined not to lose them to free agency or any market shift. When Rick Hendrick was asked about the deal, he said something remarkable. "Well, it was expensive," Rick Hendrick said with a laugh. He explained that he wanted these guys in place, that he did not want to race against them, and that they are part of the family and the fabric of Hendrick Automotive and Hendrick Motorsports. Then he revealed the detail that stunned the entire garage. Rick Hendrick said he would have signed Kyle Larson to a lifetime deal if Kyle Larson had been open to it. A lifetime deal. That almost never happens in this sport. The last driver who had one at Hendrick Motorsports was Jeff Gordon, a four-time champion and Hall of Famer who still serves as vice chairman of the company today. Rick Hendrick even said he wants Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels to retire with him. And how did Kyle Larson respond to the idea of a lifetime commitment? For me, I don't need the contract to know that I will hopefully be there for the rest of my life, Kyle Larson said. He explained that he does not foresee any reason to entertain being part of another group, because he knows what he has at Hendrick Motorsports with Rick Hendrick, Cliff Daniels, and everyone else in the building. That is not the voice of a man plotting an exit. That is the voice of a man who found his home. But one question still hung in the air, because that contract extension takes Kyle Larson through his age 39 season, right up against the famous deadline he set for himself all those years ago. Kyle Larson is now 33 years old. The 40 mark is getting closer every season. So the question was simple and unavoidable. Does he still want that full-time sprint car championship? He finally answered it this week ahead of the race weekend at Iowa Speedway, and the answer was no. I started saying this last year, but 40 is my next milestone, Kyle Larson told motorsport.com. I want to get there and then evaluate if I want to keep going or be done. It all depends on where my kids are in their lives and interests. Read that last part again because it is the key to everything. It all depends on where his kids are. The age of 40 years old is no longer a retirement date circled on a calendar. It is a checkpoint, a moment to stop and evaluate. And then Kyle Larson closed the door on the Sprint Car Championship plan completely and permanently. As far as competing for a Sprint Car Championship, I would say right now in 2026 that I have changed my mind on that, Kyle Larson said. I feel like I have accomplished a lot since I made those comments. I've been able to win 3 Knoxville Nationals, 3 Chili Bowls, and a King's Royal. He mentioned all the other races too. That is a driver telling you in his own words that he already got what he wanted. He did not need a season-long points title to prove anything to anyone. Instead of chasing a championship trophy, he went out and won the biggest individual dirt races on the calendar, the events that dirt racers dream about their entire lives. Then he explained exactly why the championship itself does not move him anymore. I just don't know what a championship would add to my career, so I'm just not into the idea now, Kyle Larson said. And like I said, I think my kids are going to be busy doing their own racing by that time, so do I really want to commit to an 80 to 90 race schedule? Then he laughed and added, that's way busier than I am now. Stop and think about that statement for a second. Kyle Larson is already one of the busiest drivers in all of motorsports. He runs the full 36-race NASCAR Cup Series schedule. He runs dirt races in between. He has raced the Indianapolis 500 twice in 2024 and 2025. And yet he looked at a full-time sprint car season of 80 to 90 races per year and called it too much work. That is how demanding the dream he once chased really is. Now here is the part of the story that truly matters. The real reason behind all of it. His oldest son, Owen Larson, is 12 years old, and he is already competing in youth racing. His daughter, Audrey Larson, is 8 years old, and she has started racing as well. His youngest son, Cooper Larson, is coming up on 4 years old, which is right around the age when children in racing families start climbing into cars for the first time. So do the math on that timeline. By the time Kyle Larson reaches 40 years old, Owen Larson will be a serious teenage racer chasing his own career. Audrey Larson will be right behind her brother. Cooper Larson will be old enough to be running his own full schedule of races. If Kyle Larson committed to an 80 to 90 race sprint car season, he would be gone almost every single weekend chasing his own championship points. And he would miss all of it. He would miss the exact years when his 3 children need him at the racetrack the most. And with his own words, he is telling us which side of that choice he is leaning toward. I just feel like I have a really good balance in my schedule this year, and I'm enjoying that, Kyle Larson said. But you never know, and 6 or 7 years down the road, things might change. That is the most honest sentence in the entire interview. He is not making a promise. He is not announcing a retirement date. He is saying that his children get a vote in his future, and he does not know yet how they will vote. He and his wife, Caitlin Larson, are raising 3 young racers, and their schedules and interests will come first. And this is not the only thing Kyle Larson has been brutally honest about lately. Just days before the Iowa Speedway comments, he stepped into a fight that nobody expected him to join. IndyCar legend Scott Dixon, a 6-time IndyCar champion, was asked about race distances and took a direct shot at NASCAR. "I find it really hard to watch Cup races these days," Scott Dixon said. "It allows for a nap, so maybe that's good." NASCAR fans were furious. Media members on both sides picked their teams, and it turned into a full tribal argument between two racing worlds. Then reporters asked Kyle Larson about it at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway before the Brickyard 400, the very race he won in 2024. He could have defended his own sport. He could have fired back at IndyCar. He did neither. "Yes, I agree that a lot of our Cup races are too long," Kyle Larson said. "I just think the way that the world is kind of gone, how people consume sports, I definitely think our races are too long. I think 3 hours is too long." He agreed with the driver from the rival series, and the numbers back him up completely. NASCAR Cup Series races this season are averaging about 3 hours and 15 minutes. The Coca-Cola 600 this year took 4 hours, 39 minutes, and 56 seconds to complete. That is longer than most movies, twice over. Fans came after Kyle Larson hard for saying it. Some told him to retire if he was bored. Others said drivers are out of touch with the people who pay real money for tickets. To be fair, he was not alone. Because Denny Hamlin had already complained about race lengths on the radio at North Wilkesboro Speedway, but Kyle Larson stood there and took the heat anyway, because he believed it was the truth. So now put both of these stories side by side and connect the dots. Here is a driver saying openly that the races are too long. Here is the same driver saying he does not want an 80 to 90 race dirt schedule. Here is the same driver saying that 40 years old is his checkpoint and that his kids will make the final call. And here is one more piece of context that makes it even more striking. Kyle Larson is currently riding the longest winless stretch of his entire Hendrick Motorsports career. More than 45 races without a victory since his win at Kansas Speedway in May of 2025, and yet he says he is enjoying his balance more than ever. That is not a man planning his next big championship chase. That is a man doing math on his own time. Kyle Larson might not leave NASCAR for another racing series at all. When the day finally comes, he might simply leave for a folding chair in a pit area at some small short track, sitting there as a father watching Owen Larson, Audrey Larson, and Cooper Larson do exactly what he did.